Hi everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to talk about taxes for self-employed visual artists. My name is Amanda and I'm an oil painter. I'm also a CPA by trade. In this channel you'll find different tips and tricks on oil painting and on being an artist. If you like my videos, I do have 2 ebooks that's available for download at the link below. Many might ask, well, who's considered a self-employed artist? A freelance artist that is self-employed creates art for clients in exchange for a fee. They typically have multiple clients and work from home, and especially in the case of digital arts, may interact with their clients entirely online. Some common names that are used interchangeably with self-employed artists include independent contractors, freelance artists, and even independent consultants. These are all basically regarded as self-employed. This counts for anyone that sells art on their website, at a gallery, or online like Etsy, or delivers a subscription service on a platform. Or if you teach lessons, do commission artwork, and sell paintings at art exhibitions, or even mural projects. These are all considered self-employed work. Now, I won't go over the specifics of how to file your taxes, but in this video, this tutorial should give you insight on what direction to take and what type of information that you need to look up on in order to file your tax return. There are many types of income. There's employment income, self-employed, RSP or 401k withdrawals, capital gains, and just to name a few. The one that we are talking about in this video is self-employed income. And because as a freelance artist, you're allowed to offer your services to different payers and clients, so you can have multiple sources of self-employed income. This amount is calculated by taking the total amount that you've earned and subtracting the expenses related to your work. Now, a lot of artists get confused between employed and self-employed tax. For employed tax, the employee typically gets a paycheck throughout the year from an employer, and the employer deducts taxes, employment insurance, and benefits, and different types of deductions from your paycheck. So for employed income, you pay the tax up front, whereas for self-employed, you calculate everything at the end of the year when you calculate and file for your tax return, and then you pay the government at the end if you owe taxes. And the one thing I'd like to clarify is that the income that you earned as a freelance artist is also called business income or other income. And you might be wondering, I don't have a registered business, I'm a freelance artist. But in your tax return, business income is referred to the same thing as freelance income. The terms are used interchangeably. So now that I have that clarified, here's the basic formula to calculate self-employed income. You take your total business income, subtract your expenses, which includes your cost of goods sold, your operating expenses, your vehicle and transportation expenses, your business use of your home expense if you work from home, and the amortization of your work equipment. Now, because you are self-employed, you have to self-manage and keep track of all your work activities throughout the year. Money that's earned through self-employment comes in different forms. For example, a client pays you a check for a mural project that you did for them, or customers can make purchases on your website, or individual customers might e-transfer you to your bank account. Some might even pay you in cash. Sometimes your client will give you a tax slip that reports how much money they've paid you. This is called a T4A in Canada or a 1099 in the United States. Only businesses or non-for-profits have to issue this tax slip. So if your client is a restaurant, a gallery, or an art store, then you should be expecting a tax slip from them at the end of the year. You might have a combination of tax slips and some income from e-transfers or checks and some from cash. So it's always a good idea to have a contract or agreement in place for larger commissions or mural projects and receipts for sales of your work. It's just safer and easier for you for tax purposes. All expenses related to you carrying out your job can be filed as an expense. And it's a good idea to know ahead of time which expenses can be counted towards your tax return so that you can manage it better throughout the year. As a tip, try to pay your expenses with the same credit card so at the end of the year, you can just pull your statements for the full year and see all your expenses together. Sometimes knowing which expenses to include on your tax return isn't very straightforward. Like if you attended a gala, which you've networked and learned a lot as an artist, or if you dined out during a 3-day workshop for figure painting. Are these personal or is it for business? The bottom line is, if it contributes to your artwork and your career, then yes, it can be included as an expense on your tax return. The first expense that I want to go over is cost of goods sold, or COGS. This is really applicable to a lot of artists because we all produce art. So COGS is the cost of the materials that ended up selling as a final product during the year, like a painting. These are the direct materials that went into making your artwork, like paint, canvas, varnish, rollers, and brushes. And I know it can be difficult to tally up all the materials that you had at the beginning, let alone track every piece of paint tube or brushes that was purchased. There's also the question of how much paint was used. So the best way to go about it is just to estimate. Track the types of materials that you currently have and then calculate how much they cost. And then try to track down how much was purchased during the year, working backwards to calculate your beginning cost of goods sold. Your ending COGS becomes your next year's beginning COGS. Your operating expenses are more straightforward. As long as you know which ones can be included and you're able to track them, then it should be pretty straightforward to report. Some examples of operating expenses include studio supplies like easels, lights, and tripods, studio furniture, cell phone bills, costs of renting your studio, courses taken related to your field, and even subscription services like Photoshop or for your website, and marketing costs as well for ads and promotions, and computer and equipment amortization costs if you have a laptop, computer, or a printer, and also supplies that were used as part of your art lessons. These can all be included as operating expenses. The next expense that I want to go over is home studio. So in tax terms, this is called the business use of home expense. In other words, if you work from home and if your studio is inside your home, all the costs related to that part of the house can be written as an operating expense. That portion of the house is calculated by percentage square footage of that studio. So what you'll need is to keep track of your total for the year: rent, utilities, internet, phone, property insurance, management fees, mortgage interest, property tax, or maintenance. When it comes to vehicle and transportation expenses, a lot of artists travel for work, running around to different work sites, shows, and art studios, so the cost of your transportation can also be included as an expense. The portion of your transportation related to your work is calculated by a percentage of mileage used for work. So what you'll need is to keep track of your total for the year: gas, parking related to traveling for work, auto insurance, maintenance, or in the case that you lease your vehicle, keep track of the lease amount. So that was a summary of how taxes work for self-employed artists. And knowing all this information is also great for managing your business. Now, I know this can be overwhelming because it's tax season and many of you might be thinking that you haven't been keeping track of anything and you don't know where to start. So just try your best to track down what we talked about. Think of where your income sources were and where the money was spent. For many artists, your work starts out small and you don't feel a need to track everything to the T until your career becomes more robust. So just try your best to maintain your books. And every year it gets easier because your books roll over to the next year. And naturally, it just gets more and more organized as the years go by. I hope you all found this video helpful. Let me know of any questions in the comments below. If you enjoy my videos, I'd love for you to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.